Hello, everyone. Tim Horn again, here with a great political conversation. I think you're going to enjoy it. My guest today is Bob Lettieri. He's been the treasurer of the AZGOP, that's the Republican State Party, for 4 years now, I think. And what we're going to find out is some information about that. And we're also going to talk to Bob because he's interested in running for chairman on January the 23rd at the AZGOP convention. So let's talk to Bob. Bob, welcome.
Thank you, Tim. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for being here. Now, we noticed that you've been the treasurer of the I can't say it all. How do you say those letters a lot?
AZGOP.
Yeah,
yes,
it's
sir.
the short form. So you've been there for 4 years. What have you learned, just roughly, about the financial end of a political party? It's the first one you've ever worked for, right? You haven't been a treasurer for that. Now, I know you've been a treasurer for a lot of things,
yeah,
but not a political party.
No, I mean, my background is clearly in finance. I've been a CFO for a long time. But a political party is not like a CFO of a business, but however, conceptually, it is a business and needs to be run as a business. Now, my first 2 years, you know that I'm in my 4th year as treasurer. My first 2 years were absolutely a challenge. When I took over in January of 2017, in a letter that was attested by the general counsel, that at that time the party was in legal peril. So take over, have no idea of the issues in front of me until I'm confronting them. And basically what the FEC was saying that we couldn't complete an audit or even do an audit for 2014 to 2016. So now you've been turned over to the Alternative Dispute Resolution Committee.
Okay.
All right. Now,
so it was your job to clear this all up.
Yes, it was, because I'm the current treasurer. How
unusual is that to happen? Is that something that rarely happens, or do you have any idea?
You know, I really don't have any idea, but it sounded awfully ominous when they said that the sanctions could be as bad as not allowing the party to take any contributions.
But that's
the death sentence, right?
But that didn't happen. You got that fixed up, right?
Now, right. But that wasn't waving my magic wand and fixing it. That took 2 years of work. I had to start by, one, getting the books of record freed up to me. When I found that the books of record didn't have the documentation, we had to do what was called a Form 99 with the FEC, and that's basically a narrative explanation to the answers that they were looking for that documentation wasn't available for.
I got it. Let me interrupt you here a little bit, Bob, because clearly you're into finance, and I'm not, and most of our viewers are probably not either at that level. The point is there was a problem, and you got it fixed up, right?
Absolutely.
So they're clean to go, and you given a clean bill of health?
Right. Well, let me tell you that like I said, when I started, the party had $29,000 in the Treasury and was faced with legal peril from the FEC. At the conclusion of my 2 years and the start of the next administration that came in January of 2019, I turned over to them $550,000 in the Treasury and a party clear of all FEC sanctions.
Wow,
clean slate.
That's a
so
great
the
job.
new chairman started in a really good position.
So I'm wondering if you want to take over my finances. I mean, it sounds like it's a pretty good thing to do. Well, so Bob, you've been successful as treasurer, and now I know you want to escalate that and move up to chairperson of the Arizona Republican Party. So
correct.
You've been around the shop for a while. You've come to learn it. So what is it like to work in a state political party? You've been in the office and probably with the pandemic out of the office too. What's the feeling that goes, what's it like? I have no idea.
Well, you know, when I first started, I went to the office regularly just to get an idea of how the office functioned, to get an idea of how the mail was opened, how the checks were counted, how the filing was done. And basically, what I found is that it needed a complete revamp of personnel. It needed a change in FEC compliance organizations. So I did that with the cooperation of the chairman. We changed the FEC reporting company, which was a vital change, and we brought in some new office personnel that were responsive to opening up the mail, letting us know what was there, and doing their job. Now, subsequent to that, with the new compliance firm, I was able to work from my office at CellTrust, from my office at home, and not go into the office as much as I used to. So basically, we need to run the party as a regular business. Money comes in, it needs to be accounted for appropriately. We've got a great reporting system. I can segment every donation by event. We have a great accounts payable system. It's a 2 authorization before a check is cut, and then there's 2 signatures required on the check.
All right.
So we've got dual control, and we have what we didn't have in the past, real visibility. If anybody wants to check something, anybody asks me a question, I go to the portal, pull up the information, here's your answer.
So you got it functioning as a business now.
Yes.
Good job. Well, now, of course, let's talk on the administrative side for a minute. Most of our viewers and listeners right now, when you talk about the Republican Party, they know that there's a little turmoil inside the Republican Party right now. Most of it are built around the end of the Trump administration, or what looks like it will be the end. What's it like being in the party right now? Do you hear a lot of different views, or is it all behind Trump, or what's it like in the political party right now that you are seeking chairmanship of?
You know, there's a lot of noise going on right now, and there's a lot of confusion. People are certainly angered at the outcome of the election, which made no sense to anybody. If you go to a Trump rally, it was so enthusiastic. It was even hard to get into. It was always oversubscribed. Biden never showed up in the state, and all of a sudden he turns out winning the state by 10,000 votes. That is so counterintuitive to your visual look at attending a Trump rally. Doesn't make any sense. So there's no doubt that people should be angry. There's no doubt that there's evidence of voter fraud. No question about it. I've worked at the polls. I see these conditional provisional ballots, people showing up with no ID at all. They're put in an envelope, and supposedly they're not opened until they can prove that they do have the ability to vote. We don't know that that's the truth. We know that there's been shenanigans at the county recorder's office. The only way to fix that, Tim, is to change the law. Go back to the way it used to be that made rational sense. You want to vote? Register. You can only register if you're a citizen, and you've got proof of that. What's wrong with doing that? Let's go back to that and change the law to reinstill that method of voting.
Well, I'll tell you, I agree with what you're saying. There needs to be change. I would just remind the listeners and viewers out there, if you think, gosh, it must be so difficult to handle, like, how many millions of votes did we have here in Arizona?
Probably 4 million.
4 million votes. But I want to remind everyone, the New York Stock Exchange, 4 billion transactions occur on an average day, and they're balanced to the penny before the day is done. So it can be done. So my concern is that the reason why we have kind of a shoddy system throughout the nation is because someone wants it to be that way so they can influence it if they need to. And I'm very concerned that that's the case. That's my personal thing. I don't have evidence beyond what people are seeing, well, people may be seeing in the news. And what I hear, unfortunately now with the censorship that's going on, that even today, Angela Merkel came out and said, this is problematic, what's going on in the United States, where the media is controlling what people are allowed to see and hear, or even say to each other. When the whole idea of the internet was, as I recall, we're supposed to have better interconnectivity with individuals than ever imagined in the history of mankind. And yet here we are being burdened with this censorship. Do you have any thoughts about censorship as it relates to politics and you becoming the chairperson of the Republican Party?
Censorship is contrary to our freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution. I mean, it's as simple as that. We're stepping away from the basic freedoms that brought so many people here to America. How can you censor me and still be compliant with the First Amendment? How can you censor me and allow me to express myself as an individual? This is mob rules. Whoever has the power is ruling, and the voice of the individual is going to disappear. We can't stand for that. I've been talking about that for a while. The way around that is look for alternatives to Google and Facebook. Encourage entrepreneurs to get into that business and compete with them and give us a fair platform, not a censored platform, but give us the ability to express ourselves as individuals. That's our right, and that right is being taken away, and we need to push back and fight it.
When I first heard about the internet and what the possibilities were, I thought, wow, that's really great, except for whoever controls it. And then I thought, well, right now, if right then, AT&T, can you imagine if they came on and said, you know, we don't like what you're saying over the telephone, so we're going to take telephone service away from you, and we're going to work with the government to make sure you can never get on a plane. You would go, well, that would never happen. That would be impossible. And yet, we're looking right down the barrel of that as a possibility today. It's scary. And I think the way out of this, unfortunately, is going to be in the hands of the party that you seek to represent in this state.
Right.
And we need good, solid leadership that realizes this and can get it done.
You know, Tim, I want to go back to something about the voter fraud. You know, one of the things that just absolutely boggled my mind, and just to be a little background about myself, I've worked in the tech industry for a long time. I'm a finance guy, sure. I'm not a coder. But we offered a product that guaranteed compliance with FINRA regulations. Now, a big bank that's got billions and billions of dollars worth of revenue has the depth within their security department to vet our software, to make sure that that software does what we advertise, that it can't be compromised, that the inputs equal the outputs. Well, when we have a customer that doesn't have that reach, they ask us for SOX 2 compliance audit. And we give them to them. It has to be cost justified, but we do. Now, what a SOX 2 audit does is it tests the software to make sure that there isn't any way that you can compromise that software, that the code is encrypted, the encrypted can't be broken, and that outputs equal inputs. Now, when I've asked the question, did the Board of Supervisors request that audit? I've never gotten an answer to that. And I know that you as a software entrepreneur say you don't think that any of those vendors that are competing for the business could pass that. Well, then let's go back to the old-fashioned paper ballot.
Yes, I agree.
And have an auditable trail.
That's right.
If we want voter integrity, we have to insist that if you can't comply, if a software vendor can't comply to a SOC 2 audit, go back to a paper ballot. That's the only way you're going to ensure voter integrity.
That is a good point. I just want to say something about 2018, because I worked in the polls in 2018. And I was there, what a long day that was. I think I came in at 6 in the morning, and I think I left at 9 when we loaded the final voted ballots up on the truck, all sealed up and everything. But we took a lot of ballots in, which were called provisional ballots, and now they're provisional and conditional ballots. But the point is, these are ballots that we take in because the other party wanted to have everybody vote, even if it's an illegitimate vote, didn't matter. Everybody has to vote. Well, and their mantra has been count every vote. No, you can't do that because, like everywhere in the world, there are only certain people that are allowed to vote. They're cleared to vote because they're a citizen, a member, whatever it is that they're voting on. They're cleared to vote on that particular issue. For example, in a corporation, not everyone can vote in a corporation. You have to have stock, you have to have standing to be able to participate. You can't just be a person off the street going, yeah, let me vote about Ford stock. No, it's not allowed. Because why? Because you get an inaccurate accounting for the people who are accountable for that company, or political party, same thing, or nation. So it is an issue. And what we did in the 2018 election is we took all these ballots in that were provisional ballots. Essentially, they're ballots that were likely to be no good. So because somebody didn't have an ID, they weren't registered in Arizona, something was wrong in it. They didn't speak English, there's something that didn't work. So we would do them a courtesy of taking these ballots, put them in a special envelope, and then put them to be counted and vetted if needed. And it turned out those ballots were taken out of their envelopes and then counted in the election, which I would still contend was why we all went to bed in 2018 thinking one party had won And it turns out by morning, it had all changed. These are the kinds of things that are being done all the time. And the alert should come to all Americans, all people in a corporation, all people in a state, wherever the possible vote's going to be. You need a free and fair election. Otherwise, there is no election. There is no voting that matters. We have to have that. It's base number one. So anyone right now who's telling you, oh, let's not look at the evidence on voter fraud, let's not pay any attention to it, you have to wonder where they're coming from, don't you? Because we all have the same interest in having a free and fair election. So it makes me think that any party that wouldn't want to look at it, any party meaning any man, woman, organization, part of a corporation that doesn't want to look at a free and fair election to make sure it's there, is questionable as to why they wouldn't. What benefit do they get by not looking at it? And that, I'm afraid to say, may be what we're seeing right now in our country. And other countries are very concerned about it. So, all right, well, we've covered that pretty well. Thank you for your input on that, Bob. A couple more questions for you. What are the three things that you would see the party needing to do during after your election? You take the place, you become chairperson, you got 2 years in that, right? It's a 2-year tenure. What happens? What are the three things you'd go after?
Well, you know, one of the things that always comes to my mind is I love that song by Lee Greenwood, Proud to be an American. Well, I'm proud to be a Republican because at least I know what my values are. And those Republican values speak to the roots of America. They speak to compliance with the Constitution. They speak to individual freedoms, having the ability to achieve as much as their drive and ambition will allow them to be. We need a country that supports that. And I want the Republican message to stand behind those values. The other thing that I think is so vitally important, we need to expand the ranks of a precinct committeeman. When I knocked on 540 doors while I was canvassing, you get the impression that the Democrats won the air war when you get responses the way I got them, and Republicans not willing to talk to you, but Democrats were. We need to expand the ranks of PCs. Right now, the best information I have is that statewide, we only have about 40% of those seats filled. I'm going to put an all-out, full-court press and give quotas and goals to every LD in the state. I'm also going to provide them with the resources, active patriots who are willing to develop a training manual for PCs, a recruiting manual for PCs, work directly with those LCs to get at least 60% statewide. That would add about 2,500 more PCs. And remember, that's 2,500 times 125 Republicans. So those boots on the ground are vital to us winning elections going forward. That's going to be one of my priorities.
So that's number two.
Yeah, the other priority I really feel is so important is there has to be a place at the table at the AZGOP for everybody who wants a place at the table. Now, we have an executive committee that's made up of 107 people. 23 don't vote.
Yeah.
And the only thing that they vote on is a budget. Now, as I've covered the state, I've gone to over 20 county and LD meetings plus Republican club meetings. Mm-hmm. And the common thread that runs through people's complaints is that I don't show up for meetings at the executive committee because there's nothing for me to do. It's boring. Well, we have positions, bylaw positions, that are appointed chairs that never get appointed. So let's roll those appointed chairs into the executive committee and give people who want to have a place at the table a place at the table. We've got so much talent in this organization that's not utilized because nobody is inviting them in. We have to have a place at the table for everybody who wants to be there. The other thing that I really need to address is that, you know, fundraising is not an easy thing. But when we take a look at the inflow of contributions that we got in 2020, they were certainly driven by the Trump wave. You know, 83% of everything we collected came from national committees. We've raised record number of dollars from direct mail, from internet. But I'm telling you, that's all part of the Trump phenomenon. That's not going to be there in 2021. So fundraising is going to be a task. And I know that I've raised over $100 million in the capital markets for 3 tech companies here in the Valley. And that's a difficult job because most of the time I'm representing a company that has an unproven product, but it has a great market opportunity. It has an unproven management team, although they're very, very talented. So they look to the CFO as the guy that they trust with their money to deploy it, to develop product and develop markets. Now, when you go out and the ask in a political contribution is so much different because you don't even get a tax write-off and you don't get a share in anything. What you get is the assurance that if you believe in the Republican Party's values, that you're going to get somebody that's going to use that money to increase voter registration, to increase participation, and get the message of what being a Republican will do for you.
Thanks, Bob. That's good. You know, all of us realize this, but it's never can be said enough, and that is, if you think that it's not important who your leaders are, who you vote for, your vote isn't important, realize that they will determine your future. What goes on, the regulations, everything that happens around you will be decided by those people who are running an election. And for this election, for the state chairman, it's Bob Lettieri that was with us today. He's done a fine job. I think he's a fine candidate, and I think he's got a big job ahead of him, but it's one that he's ready for, experienced for, and I think he's going to make those things he just talked about happen.
You know, Tim, one other thing that I need to add, you know, you always hear people say, you know, we run this like a business. Well, guess what? Show me your business plan if you're running it like a business. One of the things I'm absolutely going to do, and I've already done it, but it hasn't been used, is to develop a business plan to present to potential donors, to show them how their money is going to be used. This is my plan. Now hold me accountable to it. I'll give you reporting. I'll make it transparent. I will be accountable for you for your money. So a business plan is an absolutely essential ingredient to establishing trust, right?
It is, absolutely.
You don't know me.
I'm a business guy.
Why would you trust me with your money if I'm not demonstrating, one, what am I going to do with your money? And now here's a report on what I did with your money.
I got it. Well, we're running short of time, but Bob, I do trust you, and I want you voters to trust Bob too. You've seen the kind of guy he is. On January the 23rd, all the state committeemen will gather here in the Phoenix area, and we'll be voting on who's going to be leading our party for the next 2 years. It's important. Make sure you're there. Make sure you're there by proxy or Zoom if you can't physically be there, but try to be there physically. And we'll be seeing what happens. Bob, good luck.
Tim, do we have a minute for just one more closing
No, we were
comment?
just cutting off, Bob.
Sorry.
You know what? He's becoming a politician quickly, isn't he? We're short of time. This is it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to us today. Bob, thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.